Welcome to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling. You are about to discover impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you, so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Be sure you visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com. While you're there, subscribe to us via your favorite network. Now tune in, get ready, and enjoy the journey of emerging as a leader of exception in the 21st century.
Welcome, everyone, to the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast. I'm your host, Vicki Noethling, coming to you from Roswell, Georgia. The goal of this podcast is to bring topics and guests that will empower you to become that confident leader and take your business and your life to the next level. Today, I am excited to have as my guest Bruno Cignacco. So let me tell you about Bruno. Dr. Bruno Cignacco is an international business consultant, international speaker, and business coach. For over 20 years, he's advised and trained hundreds of companies on international trade activities and international marketing. He is a university lecturer. He is a senior fellow of the Higher Education Academy, and he is the author of business and personal development books published in different languages. His new book is titled The Art of Compassionate Business. So we're going to talk about compassionate business today. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Bruno Cignacco.
Thank you, Vicki, for this invite. I feel very honored to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we always start out with two easy questions. The first is to just tell the audience, where do you call home? Where do you live right now?
I live in London, UK. I have been living in London for nearly 15 years. I'm also Italian, Argentinian, and now English, British. So I feel very comfortable here because it's a very nice city. And also I have a lot of parks to go during the weekend. I feel very nice here.
Yeah, it's a very diverse culture in the UK for sure. So I gave a little bit about what you do today, who you are, but I'd love for you to tell that backstory about the journey that really took you to do what you do today. What was that moment that you said, there's more that I can give? And so go ahead, take it away.
Very important. Yes, I started more than 30 years ago as a traditional accountant, very simple set of activity like taxes and also auditing, cost projection. And then after 10 years, I started working as a consultant in international marketing. And I have been doing this for around 30 years now. And wow. I have been advising companies on import-export activities, international market strategies, but also international negotiation, international partnerships. And then in the last 5-6 years, I have started with a new business unit with my consultancy organization that was about to advise companies on how to become much more human-oriented. This came from a very interesting article that I read a while ago that was titled The Human Moment at Work in Harvard Business Review. And in this article, there were some interesting insights that they were talking about, not the strategies, tactics, but they were talking about building a strong relationship with different stakeholders. And this motivated me to write a book that in its first edition was titled The Art of Compassionate Business, that was published by Routledge before the pandemic. And then after the pandemic, I wrote the second edition of this book that is about the same topic, but includes hundreds of examples of compassionate organization. In the last few years, I have been advising companies on how to develop a much more mindful conversation in the workplace, how to develop a much more psychologically safe workplace, but also how to develop a much more meaningful business mission, a mission which includes economic aspect, but also social orientation and environmental impact. I also train companies on some aspects such as mindfulness and business, some aspect of stress, how to become less stressful, this work environment, how to become less stressful, but also how to connect to different stakeholders, customers, suppliers, employees,
Yeah.
community members in a much more compassionate way.
Yeah. We're so aligned in what we really coach and teach. Because I started after 40 years of being in corporate. I thought, what made me successful in my last 10 years was being that compassionate businesswoman. And so I coach leading with the heart, the head, and the hands. And to me, you have to build that relationship. You have to establish that you are empathetic and understand what that person may be going through and can help them. And once you have that connection, then you can have them understand the logic and the tie into the mission and the vision and all those other things.
This makes a lot of sense. I agree with you, and many employees and many business people believe that the most important factor in business is, for example, artificial intelligence or technology or information or funds. And when I train these entrepreneurs and other attendees to my talks and training events, I tell them that the most important factor in business is none of these factors that I mentioned. It's the human being. The human being is the most important factor because it's a meta resource. It's a resource that helps companies generate other resources. For example, the human being is the one that generates the artificial intelligence. The human being is the one generating new business models, new products, innovative services, new systems, new procedures. And when we care for the human being, that is the most important resource, human being, we're talking about internal stakeholders like employees, management, and external stakeholders like customer, suppliers, business partner, community members. When we care for these human beings and we build a strong, long-lasting relationship with these stakeholders are on our side. They are cooperating with our company spontaneously. And this stakeholder will help us very dutifully to achieve this key performance indicator, profitability, productivity, efficiency. Instead, when we focus only on this key performance indicator, what I call quantitative aspect of business, what can be measured precisely like profit or market share, we tend to dismiss the human aspect, and in some cases, we look for a profit by all means. For example, by unethical ways, for example, exploiting employees, deceiving customers, polluting the environment. So there should be an equilibrium between what we call the quantitative aspect of business, profitability, productivity, efficiency, and the qualitative aspect of business that cannot be measured precisely, such as empathy, support, compassion, care, camaraderie, commitment, and other aspects.
And it's interesting that you point that out, because I remember years and years of having the metrics for projects and different in your personal development conversations with your manager, and it was always that push. Well, I need to see the quantitative thing, and it's like, but what moves the needle often is the qualitative.
Yes, and it's counterintuitive because many people will say, if we don't focus on this quantitative aspect, we will not survive. On the contrary, when you focus only on the quantitative aspect, you can take this to the extreme by taking advantage of different stakeholders, by developing win-lose agreement, where the company wins at the expense of customers, the company wins at the expense of employees or the community or the environment. So in business, there is a very important principle, I'm sure that you will agree with me, that is the principle of interdependence. No company can succeed on its own. We have to rely on customer or employees, on business partners or suppliers. Wouldn't it be nice to have all these stakeholders on our side? We cannot force them to be on our side. But we can build a strong relationship with them where the needs of each party is mutually satisfied, long-term relationship, so that they are on our side spontaneously, on their own. So this is quite important because many companies believe that they can succeed on their own. No, everything in life and in business is interdependent. And companies need to develop strong partnerships, strong bonds with these stakeholders. And I see that many companies only take a transactional approach. If we want to sell to this customer, we consider this a one-off transaction instead of building long-term relationship with this customer that can come back once and again and can recommend our company and product to other potential customers. So this is the key aspect, and this is a very important point that I always highlight in my training.
Yeah. So as you work with other companies, how are you guiding them to create that compassionate work environment?
But let's first define compassion, because we haven't talked about the definition of compassion. Compassion in simple terms is relating to others in non-judgmental way. This means understanding how they think, how they feel, so connecting to them on a cognitive level and an emotional level, but also try to help them whenever possible, especially when they face difficulties. So this is quite important, because in business and in most of the work environments, we see the opposite. People acting in a non-compassionate way. And many will ask, how can this happen? Because we need people to cooperate with us. We need people to trust us. We need people to help us achieve our objective in business. This happens for few reasons. What I observe in my practice, and also I mentioned this in my book, The Art of Compassionate Business, is that in practice, people are very hindered by specific limitation in the workplace. For example, lack of time. How can you be compassionate with others if you don't have time to hold a conversation, 1 minute conversation, to talk about probably not business topics? Supposing that you see a colleague that is a bit despondent or a bit depressed, but you are continually attending meetings. How can you connect to this colleague and help them if you are continually busy? So the aspect of busyness is a very important hindrance for to be compassionate. But also another important hindrance is multitasking, many projects at the same time. So you cannot expand your awareness because you are distracted continually with new projects and also tight deadlines, which implies a lot of pressure. So this means that when people are stressed, they are less likely to be compassionate. Why? Because they feel like they are in a defensive mode. They are trying to cope with some challenges that it could be very demanding. So this is, but also in some cases in business, what is privilege is the business communication, business conversation. People are prevented from talking about non-business topics. And what I observe at companies that are very successful, they take their time for social events. For example, some companies organize once a week a meeting outside work time where employees can meet from different parts of the organization, top level and also the bottom level and middle level, where they can meet and have dinner and have fun. They let their hair down. They can talk to one another on a personal level. They can know each other. They can talk about their families, their hobbies, because at the end, before being employees, they are human beings. Employees it could be temporary, it could be the job that have to pay their bills, but in practice, there are something more than this position. And when employees have these social events, the practice show me that they can revitalize. They come back to work revitalized, more energized, and they tend to be much more effective and much more productive, and they connect to the colleagues in a much more cooperative way because they know each other on a much more personal level, much more human level. So the idea is that this is important. And another important aspect that prevents companies from becoming compassionate is fear. I see a lot of fear in the workplace when I am advising companies. First, we have like a fear audit to see what are the pockets of fear within this organization. And there are different types of fear. Some of them are mentioned in my book. For example, employees in many cases are fearful of being fired, or fearful of being penalized harshly, or fearful of being outpaced by colleagues, in some cases in a very competitive workplace, or fearful of making mistakes, or fearful of rocking the boat, innovating with new ideas. So this means when you are fearful, so you are in a defensive mode, you are focusing on the potential threat. How can you be compassionate? So they're kind of incompatible. So first off, it's important to detect these hindrances in the workplace and then provide companies with different tools that are very simple to apply, and there is a lot of research on this, such as how to develop a much more grateful attitude, much more generous attitude, how to develop more trust in the workplace, how to be kinder and also engage with different stakeholder, colleague, customer in a much more personal way, not only talking about business, because at the end, business topic can be interpersed with non-business topic. So not being so focused on the business topic, which are important, but also the non-business are very important too, allowing employees and talk to colleagues and also other stakeholders about their emotions, because what we see that emotion in many workplaces are considered as disruptive factors. This means that many people will think that if you express your emotion, especially some emotion that could be challenging like fear or sadness, this could disrupt your productivity, your efficiency. But at the end, if you don't express this emotion in a wise way, they tend to be repressed or suppressed, and this will affect your performance all the same. You cannot leave your emotions outside work. They come with you. So this is what we try to train with companies, and we see a lot of welcoming attitude from these companies. In some cases, few companies show a bit of resistance with this type of tools, but when we show the data that is backed by science, and there are many examples of companies that are acting in this way, and they're both profitable and they have a strong bonds with different stakeholders, these companies are more prone to become convinced with this approach.
And it's so true. And, you know, even if someone's out there and saying, well, you know, I let my people come and talk to me, but whenever you go in and talk to your manager or supervisor, is that manager or supervisor fully engaged? You talked about multitasking. You know, how often do you go in and talk to them and they're looking at their computer and you're talking, but they really aren't listening actively, or they may be on their phone, or, you know, in a group of other people and you're chatting, but they're, you know, observing someone else in the room. So it's how engaging are you?
How engaging, but also it's about broadening your awareness. There is a very interesting example that I mentioned in the book that is about the healthcare sector. And for example, people that are about to go through surgery, for example, if they have a meeting with the doctor, 1 minute meeting, where the doctor can soothe this patient, they can get them quiet, less stress. They can explain all the aspects of this operation. They will explain that they will try to support them as much as possible. When this conversation that take only 1 minute, this compassionate conversation is held before the operation, this patient is more likely to need less anesthesia, and the recovery from this surgery is much quicker as compared with a patient that didn't have this 1 minute compassionate conversation. So this have very tangible effects. But I give you another piece of research that is very interesting. Many people now talk about psychologically safe workplace, and this is a very important topic, and many people will agree that it's a priority in many workplaces. But what is a psychologically safe workplace? It's a work environment where people feel at ease. They can be themselves. They don't have to fake. They can propose new ideas. They can make mistakes without being ridiculed or harshly penalized. But also these people are more prone to be supported by colleagues, and all the colleagues within this organization are likely to act in a compassionate way. According to research, when there is a psychologically safe workplace, where people behave in a loving way with one another, there is higher employee satisfaction, higher customer satisfaction, because employees that are happy are more prone to make customers happy. Employees that are unhappy are less prone to make this customer happy. But also lower absenteeism, lower turnover, lower stress levels, and this impact positively on the bottom line. And this reduce costs, for example, medical costs, because there is lower stress in the workplace. And people develop much more trust-based bonds with colleagues and also other stakeholders. So this means that being kind, being supportive, is not only to being nice to others, what will be nice, but also is about building a strong relationship would have a very significant impact on the bottom line, on the profit, on market share, on productivity. If we dismiss the human aspect, we're less prone to achieve this high performance indicator in a very positive way because we're mistreating the stakeholders that are the most important factor in business.
Wow. So very true. So when we talked earlier about metrics, how can companies improve their KPIs?
How they can improve without focusing so much on the KPI and focusing more on the qualitative aspect. Why appear to be counterintuitive? But in practice, when we focus on this qualitative aspect of business and how we do in practice, we have to understand that every stakeholder, internal stakeholder or external stakeholder, have a series of needs. Many companies mistakenly focus on one type of need, economic need. For example, company might say, oh, we are paying a good salary to this employee. This is not enough. This is satisfying only one type of need, economic need. But employees have economic need, they have emotional needs too. This means they need to be recognized. They need to be supported. They need to be acknowledged. For example, with a thank you note. For example, with an event to acknowledge and recognize this employee contribution. If you do not acknowledge this employee, how you expect this employee to act in a positive way? And if they're acting in a positive way, you are not rewarding this positive behavior. If this employee has a good salary, but they're not recognized, it's very prone that this employee will look for another company where they get a good salary and they are recognized because this emotional need is not satisfied. But employees and other stakeholders have mental needs. I see many companies that are boring employees to death. For example, I went to the other day to a factory and I saw an employee hammering nails 8 hours a day. 8 hours a day. This is the only time. How can you expect this employee to be motivated? So how you satisfy the mental needs? With new training, new type of event where employee can enhance their skill or develop new skill, with mentoring, with coaching, with skill training on the job, but also with job rotation. Maybe some companies use this and for example, they allow this employee to work 1 month in the marketing department, but then the other month in the administrative department, and the other month in the manufacturing department, and they have an overall view of the company. So mental needs are important, and social needs. Many employees are isolated. They cannot connect to colleagues to look for support. They cannot connect to colleagues to talk about their difficulties. So this is quite important again. So you see that there are different type of needs: economic needs, mental needs, emotional needs, social needs, and some would say that there are also spiritual needs that are nothing to do with religion, but have to do with the meaningfulness. So employees want to feel that they count, they are making a meaningful contribution. And this is very important, especially in companies that have a broader business mission, where they have economic aspect, they want to get profit, they want to get market share, but also social aspect, which imply a positive impact on the community, on the society in general, but also environmental aspect, leave a better planet for our future generations.
So very true. Earlier, we talked about contributing and kind of networking. And I always found that one of the ways, besides just having social things, which maybe not everybody is into, like we'll have a bowling event or something. But what I found was whenever we do community service, volunteer events, where there's such it really impacts how that person, they're doing something with others that they may not ever, you cross departments and things, you get to have informal, no suit and tie kind of interaction with the folks. You get to learn new skills oftentimes in a very casual, comfortable way. You get to know each other personally, and then you have that feeling of satisfaction that you helped someone. So I always found volunteering was a great way to bring in that compassion to an organization.
And many companies that I mentioned in my book are paying for the days that the employees take for volunteering. So this means that the companies try to foster this philanthropy. This means that they try to support these employees that are volunteering and contributing to social causes in a positive way, and they're paying off a certain amount of days per year so that the employee can devote this time to help the society, help communities in need, and so on.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what are 3 tips that you might give to a organization or an entrepreneur to help them thrive in business, but having a compassionate business?
Very important. Well, the first tip is try always to adopt a generous attitude. What we see in many companies is the opposite. Most companies want to obtain more profit, obtain more customer, obtain more market share, obtain higher productivity level, higher quality level. But like everything in life, there is a equilibrium, a balance between obtaining, getting, and giving. So there should be a balance. And some will say, oh, but I don't have anything to give. Well, in practice, I gave examples in my latest research that is about giving tangible things. For example, supposing that an employee work hard to meet the deadline and they have work for many hours beyond the work time. And this employee can be recognized economically with tangible rewards, for example, a bonus. This will be giving tangible things. But the most important things in many cases are intangible things. What can we give? We can give an ear. For example, if the employees are a bit worried, they're a bit nervous because they have to meet the deadline or they have some problems at home, the manager can listen to these employees, can listen to their doubts, their hesitation, their fears. Listening to them is very important. They can give this employee training. They can provide this employee with coaching. They can provide this employee with technical advice, technical information. In some cases, I saw a very interesting example during the pandemic a few years ago where the company had to fire employees, because they didn't have any other choice. But this was a compassionate company. And what did this company do? What did the company give these employees? They gave training courses how to develop CVs. And they gave these employees, in relation to this employee, gave recommendation to competing companies. They refer these employees to the competing company so that this competing company can even consider this idea of hiring this employee that were about to be fired. So you can always give something that you don't have tangible thing, intangible thing. The second tip will be being grateful. In many cases, there is a lot of research on gratefulness and business, and what we see is that many people take the contribution from others for granted. And this is not good, because when you take others for granted, you are not appreciating this, and then this means appreciating has 2 values, giving thanks to them, but also increasing the people's value by praising them. Right. When you're not praising them, you're not giving any recognition or recognizing their efforts. Well, in practice, this employee might be demotivated or might be a bit stressed because of the situation. I'm not recognized, I don't count. So in practice, when you recognize the people's contribution, they're more prone to keep on contributing. Yeah. Because when you take them for granted, you are not rewarding positive behavior, and they're less likely to contribute in the future. They might be likely to move to another company. So this is very important. How can I be more thankful to different stakeholders? Thankful to customer. In some cases, I see company that customer made a very big purchase from this company, and the company didn't take the time to send a thank you email or thank you email. And even when the customer didn't buy from that company, the company should be thankful all the same, because this customer spent their time at least considering the company's product. So thankfulness is a very important point. But also, how can I be more compassionate with colleagues, with people within the company, but also with different stakeholders? What we observe is that many people in business, especially the ones that are related to customer, adopt what I call a selling attitude. Selling attitude is when you are continually focused on the company's objective. I want to sell more. I want to sell the most expensive product because I will have a higher commission, instead of thinking about the customer that will be the one spending the money on the company. What is the alternative attitude to the selling attitude? Is the service attitude. When you adopt a service attitude, you try to serve customer, add value to them, because you know that by serving them, you are serving your company, because at the end, the profit comes in most cases from customers. Customers that are happy, they're satisfied, well served, and you have been very effective with the approach of this customer, are more prone to leave positive reviews, become ambassador of this company,
That's right.
and also recommend other potential customers. Instead, when you only focus on your own objective and you try to sell whatever you want to sell to this customer, even they don't need this product, these customers feel manipulated. They feel that they are a figure in the database that are contributing to your profit, and they don't feel humanized. So many companies manipulate their dehumanized customers. So these are the 3 main tips.
Awesome. Wow, we could talk for probably hours on this subject, and love everything that you shared today. It's what I live and breathe, and I can tell you all that what he's talking about is absolutely true and definitely does work. If you want to connect with Bruno and really see how he might help you and your company become more compassionate in business, I'm going to share my slide that has contact information. If you're just listening, I do read the information, but you can find all this information on my YouTube channel, Vicki Noethling, or my findyourleadershipconfidence.com. So the website is his name, Bruno Cignacco, and that's BrunoCignacco.com, BrunoCignacco.com. On LinkedIn, you can find him by Dr. Bruno Cignacco. Definitely just search his name. You will be able to find him. I am going to turn it over to Dr. Bruno right now. He's going to tell you some of the things you might find on the website that would be helpful, resources as well as links, and what he puts out there on LinkedIn. So, Dr. Bruno, it's all yours.
Thank you very much. Well, on the website, there are a lot of articles and interviews on the topic of compassionate business, and also on the topic of compassionate feedback, compassionate workplace, compassionate customer service. So these are very interesting articles. And also on LinkedIn, they can find also some snippets of my book, also with example of companies that are acting in a compassionate way. I try to relate each company to a specific topic. For example, there is an example of generosity and business, and some example of companies that are generous, or some example of kind companies, and also related to the topic of kindness. Everything is backed by research.
Fantastic. So it's been just wonderful having our conversation today. I enjoyed it so much. You gave so many great pieces of information for the audience, and I appreciate you taking the time to be with me today.
Thank you very much, Vicki. I feel very honored to be here.
Awesome. As always, I remind everyone that life is a journey, and it's up to you to enjoy the ride. This is Vicki Noethling, signing off.
Thank you for tuning into the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast with Vicki Noethling, where we share impactful lessons that help you grow as an individual, grow your confidence, and find the positive and good within you so you powerfully and authentically become the best version of yourself. Remember to visit our website at www.findyourleadershipconfidence.com and enjoy even more great episodes like this one. Again, while you're here, subscribe to us via your favorite network. We look forward to seeing you next time on the Find Your Leadership Confidence podcast.